Well, hello there, friends. Stag here. I don't like to share too much personal information or experiences often on the internet. But as trends go, I thought I would talk a bit about my experiences and perception through the mind of an angsty teen, as we all have well been there, and sharing experiences can help with our own perceptions of the world around us. You hear these stories all about. It was something I just didn't think about, really. I guess I have been blessed in the aspect of not really being treated too different by art teachers, the majority leaving very little impact or interest. They just kind of phoned it in and felt like they weren't even into art to begin with. I was quiet and had fairly limited interactions with teachers, period. This is more a story about my own faults. Now, I'm gonna go into this quick about critiques. Critiques are viable. They can help you improve. Some can be misguided, wrong, or more volatile or vindictive with troll-like deliverance, and you don't have to take them all. But you should acknowledge your weaknesses to improve. There are certain curriculum your teachers will have you do, and despite it sucking, it can make your art better in the long run by stepping out of your comfort zone, whether it being getting better grasp on anatomy, application, or a trick or concept that you learned that will stick for the rest of your life. I feel exploring these things are crucial, but you also have that need to shine within your comfort zone and to do what you are accustomed to. Some people just suck, and their opinions suck. Anime and manga is absolutely art, and your teacher might just want to push you in your own boundaries to improve. Maybe they just had a less than tactful approach. You can't do exaggerated anatomy justice without understanding what you're exaggerating. These are all overarching themes I've seen with a lot of stories from other artists. So let us travel back to the year of 2003. A young stag, the approximate age of 14, I was an odd child. I had been working as a dishwasher and prep cook at my local diner after school for nearly a year, and for the most part did what I wanted. I didn't take being told what to do very well and could be borderline passive-aggressive. In the recap, I was a 14-year-old with a false sense of maturity, little responsibility, and money to add to self-importance. I had my own domain website featuring my art, webcomic, and odd bits. I had a subpage called Yeti Man that featured a friend of mine wrapped in toilet paper, and sightings of him around town. The majority of my friends were 4+ years older than myself, as I hung out with my brother and his friends. I was kind of in between worlds, and I was doomed to be a rebellious teen from the start. I was always quiet and lacked most social skills. I wasn't able to always perceive the right mouth words, and most conversations would end in abysmal failure. I spent my life living in a sketchbook, creating my little worlds, and spent most of my time alone. I preferred it that way. If it wasn't for an all-black wardrobe and hair like Edward Scissorhands or Robert Smith, I would most likely have just blended into the scenery, into the oblivion, and no one would know I was there. So at this time, I was starting the 9th grade in high school. It was an entirely new experience. The school structure was so different from middle school, and it was near surreal. They combined all the middle schools in the area together, and it just was this huge place with so many people. The oddest thing about it was I could do art class every day. I was used to it being once or twice a week in prior years, but this school had a purely dedicated art wing for art, graphic design, printmaking, metalworking, woodworking. I could choose 2 electives, so I went with Intro to Visual Arts and Graphic Arts. I have a hard time remembering everything to a T, as it was a while ago and I wasn't there much to... I will get into that later. Graphic arts ended up being not what I expected, and I absolutely hated it. That can be a story for another day. This is not about that teacher. We are talking about Mr. Introduction to Visual Arts. We will call him the Hawk, which was his nickname. Mr. Hawk was, I wanted to say, in his 40s, but kind of walked with a bounce to his step, with a young type persona he gave off. I can't entirely remember what he looked like, but in my mind I see him wearing Converses and bobbing his head a lot. Whether or not he actually wore Converse, I don't remember, but I feel like he did. So far, impressions weren't really bad. We had fancy new drafting desks, the actual art area was huge, there was a computer lab for digital art, and there were 2 other art classes that took place in the same proximity, but it was a fairly open area. I don't know what the other classes were. As well, you'll find out I didn't do no goods. To start the program for the year, we did a project we would be working on for the course of months, which had a lot of different elements to it, kind of spread out. The concept was to design a fashion brand that borrowed heavily from the graphic art side. We had to concept some art and some models, create a company, branding, and the project would end in at least one wearable item. I wasn't that thrilled about it, but I didn't ever get that far. First day, suddenly a wild Mr. Hawk appears, somewhat positive, head bobbing, and he just watches me draw. Back then, I had a problem with people watching me draw. I could care less now, but him in my space, just watching already, I was so uncomfortable and not quite sure how to deal with it. The very act of him standing there made me screw up repeatedly. A simple process of drawing a model should have been fine, but no. So, the following dialogue ensued. The model should be 8 heads tall, says the hawk. My chicken scritcherings lay there, and I could barely draw a dang circle on the paper for the model's head. I answer, I know, in probably a very irritated tone. I felt it come out, and I knew it was off. He seemed really taken back by this, like, oh well, okay then, and his entire face had changed. I then asked him, are you done? Putting that nail in the coffin of a terrible relationship from then on out. I didn't know how to handle the situation, so I was trying to close off all dialogue and retreat somehow. I never drew that model in that class. The next day, I think I finished up the drawing, and I don't think it was bad. It wasn't great, but he just avoided me like the plague and would doubt on everyone around me, constantly offering critique and uplifting comments. He would linger around my area, seemingly purposefully, but avoid me, and he'd pass me and glare. Whether or not he did it or was my own paranoia, I do not know. I never got anything positive about my work. I didn't really need the validation, but going to this class, I had some high hopes. I was so excited, and I was just having a hard time, and I didn't know how to deal with any interactions or how to fix this. I just fixated on him hating me and felt my art would probably go nowhere. From then on out, I actually actively skipped art class. I would just go and brood in the bathroom, drawing away in my sketchbook every day. Suddenly, something that created such joy for me just ended up something I was running from. I ended up leaving school for a while that year with alternative schooling precisely for my inability to deal with people. I never finished that project. I never passed Intro to Visual Arts. So, 10th grade rolls around. I started the year still in alternative schooling, but decided to go back. Despite being the blossoming antisocialite, I assume I got bored. So about 3 weeks or a month in, I went back to school. I once again signed up for Intro to Visual Arts, and hope like hell I got a different teacher. I did not. So once again, I was stuck with this guy I assumed hated me, and I couldn't dare talk to, as it would most likely have ended in stuttering, uncomfortable, and possibly volatile conversation. But since I missed part of the same project I did the previous year, I was able to skip some of it and pick up approximately where I left off the year before. And I just ended up sketching that class casually until I was instructed what to do. It was very uncomfortable because I knew he had to talk to me, because he had to tell me what I was supposed to do. I was kind of like a new student, and Yeah. But he saw my artwork for the first time, drawing and doing what I wanted to do. He saw the stuff I spent a lot of time on, characters I was working on, comics, and goddamn if that man didn't warm up. He thought I was one of those kids that would sign up for art for an easy credit, that didn't care, that couldn't or wouldn't art, who had no interest in the subject. And of all the teacher doesn't like cartoony anime stuff out there, this man did like it. He drew comics on the side. I don't know if he realized I was a little off, but he kind of figured it out for my constant leaving and returning to school. I ended up getting further into that project that year, and I got to try screen printing, which, if not for that, I would have no idea what it was to this day and would never have attempted it without some prior knowledge I had gotten from school. I hated the concept of the project, but I ended up with a grasp of an awesome trade I am able to utilize today within my art business. I ended up not finishing Intro to Visual Arts that year either, as I eventually went back to alternative schooling again. I did wind up with credits for art those 2 years. You needed so many credits to graduate, but the actual class of Intro to Visual Arts was always marked incomplete for me because, well, I never completed it. So, 11th grade, I go back to school once again, but this time, I believe it was the beginning of the year, I got this bright idea. If I select Intro to Visual Arts twice, I wasn't sure if I could do it. I have no recollection of what I took as a second elective the year before, but this year I think they tried to combat me on it, and they just decided to give me 2 different teachers for the same class. The one teacher a substitute for another teacher that was out most of the year. He ended up not really following the curriculum and let me do whatever. He was like this gym teacher that didn't really belong in the arts department. He couldn't draw and had no idea what was up. But we always would banter back and forth, and it was a relatively enjoyable experience. He did end up taking a permanent art teacher spot as he realized he really liked it. But I had Mr. Hawk again as well. This time around, he did not make me do the project and let me as well have free time. At this point, he was like, "Here, I have this 60 by 30 inch canvas. I thought you might be able to utilize it. Have at it." At this point, I hadn't really painted before and was doing a lot of more mixed media and textured stuff. There were different tiers to the art curriculum. You had to pass Intro to Visual Arts to get to level 2, 3, Super 4, 5 tier. I don't even know. I didn't go there. The Super Art kids would be in like those higher tiers and had to follow curriculum, but they were left kind of more to their own devices and free exploration. But they had overall projects they had to complete for the year. I'm not sure how the classes work because there was only about like 4 or 5 of those kids, but he would set me with them and just let me do whatever I wanted, and it was awesome. I probably would have learned more following some sort of curriculum, but at this time it was just what I needed to explore the supplies on my own. Every now and again he would throw something at me like glass medium and be like, "Use this, do something with this." Eventually, though, I went back to alternative schooling. But this time, cyber school. So I would be in the school system for the district yet, and could do this dual school thing where I went to school just for art, but would do the cyber schooling at home. The problem with that was I lived in the country. My bus ride was normally an hour or more. Getting a ride to school partway through the day for just the art classes was, well, impossible with working parents. So I rode that bus in the morning and in the afternoon as well. And I haunted that art room all day long. Mr. Hawk was entirely fine with it. I would take both lunches, then hang out in the art room painting all day. I completely manipulated the system. I unfortunately did not do the cyberschooling and never once logged into it the months I was doing it. Eventually the school started going after me and figured out when I was spotted at both lunches what I was doing, and they couldn't have a random student wandering around the halls that wasn't supposed to be there in between periods, and my devious plot was spoiled. They said I either had to do schoolwork and come in only for 2 periods of art or come back to school entirely. Can you guess what 16-year-old Stag did? Was it come back to school and pass Intro to Visual Arts for once and for all? Oh, no. I'm a high school dropout. I did test out and I got my diploma anyway, and it wasn't my GED, it was like an actual high school diploma. So, this circumstance was entirely created by me. Just saying the wrong things. I found myself often impulsive and saying things really out of place, and I just wanted the moments to end and wasn't able to think of words to express that, but rather just exploded random shit from the depths of panic. It made my situation worse. I don't condone or encourage a whimsical school life. Your future shouldn't really be taken lightly. Decisions you make in high school can affect you for the rest of your life, and most teens make poor decisions. And then they think they are amazing in the moment. I never really saw a future and was, well, whimsical. There were a lot of factors going on that were related to my in and out of school experience, and I don't really want to play it off as a cool kid, rebellious, hell yeah kind of story. The circumstances were very scary and personal, and I encourage anyone wanting to pursue art to stick with it. If you have the opportunity to take a dedicated art class, definitely go for it and utilize it to its potential. You never know what you will take away from it. But how I handled a situation escalated quickly and could have ruined the positive experiences I did have. While I know my story is somewhat different in the aspect of I eventually wasn't forced through the curriculum and to deviate from my comfort zone, there were positive interactions I took from the project that I did do. And he did find ways to challenge me loosely with random supplies. Mr. Hawk became one of my all-time favorite teachers, and I appreciate him immensely. I have no idea where he is today, but I hope he is doing well. I have to laugh because my husband hated him in school, but loved the graphic arts class, which I absolutely hated. That teacher was his Mr. Hawk. But I'm reminded this last school year, I am now 30 and I have a 10-year-old daughter. She had a hard time with her teacher. She had a substitute she got along with the first half of the year while the teacher was on maternity leave. When the new teacher came back, they did not mesh well at all. Something along the lines happened where the teacher was not able to see my daughter as she was, and because of a poor first impression, and my daughter then hated the teacher based off of negative reactions, and they just fed each other back and forth. From what she talked about, I could see this cycle. The teacher was coming in halfway through the year. She didn't know any of the kids. Whatever reputation my daughter made with the old teacher did not matter because it was a new teacher. Somehow perceptions became crossed and my daughter was seen as a kid that didn't want to listen and wanted to draw all day and would mouth back sometimes under her breath. But she was also venting frustrations with the new teacher. I ended up reaching out to that teacher and discussing things, and the rest of the year went smoothly without misunderstandings. And I encouraged my daughter to be more positive and understand the situation and why impressions mattered in the beginning. But it just kind of reminded me of this whole circumstance, and it's just so easy for things to become kind of skewed. We are all awkward little shits when we're younger, and our perception is often skewed. I had a terrible experience with my art teacher because I was an asshole. But when things changed slightly, the whole scenario changed. Both our perceptions were off of what we expected from one another. It's easy to analyze absolutely everything someone else does without looking to ourselves. Even if the other party handles it wrong as well, there just might be a sampling, a justification within those reactions, and if not explored more, like, it just can be this endless cycle that just keeps feeding itself. Did you guys have any teachers you really liked or hated, or had a situation similar to where it was just a misunderstanding? Well, let me know. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. This is a bit of a different video. I figured I would share my experiences and how they may have differed from others. This painting was titled The Hunger, featuring a zombie girl. And feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I post all my current works in progresses. You can also find me on Patreon, and of course my website, lowbrowmisfits.com, loaded with a medley of prints, paintings, stickers, pins, and more, featuring my art. This might be something I revisit back later, but anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.